Planning out your content can be a big, scary, sometimes daunting task for your small business, but it doesn't have to be. So today I want to break down how I plan out my content on a yearly, monthly, and weekly basis. And I want to give you some inspiration, tips, and tricks on how you can achieve this too, because it's really not as difficult as you think. And before we dive into this video, one key thing to know is that we're just talking about the planning and kind of scheduling out your calendar stage here. We're not going to be talking about content ideation, things like that. This is just looking at the grand scheme of how you're going to be producing content. So first, let's look at your yearly overview. I typically like to do this in December of the year prior to what I'm planning, but you do you. You can start in the beginning of the year. You can do it in November. I don't care. But I sit down and review the year prior to find out what worked, what didn't, what needs to change, what needs to shift. I celebrate the big wins and acknowledge the big losses and just overall see how my content performed over the last year. And this can just be you looking at your analytics. It doesn't have to be some big report. So typically I like to just review everything, take a bunch of notes for myself as I'm starting to plan my content for the following year. So then I like to look at my Google Calendar. And yes, I want you to start looking at the personal things that you have in your life when it comes to planning out your content, because I want you to acknowledge major life happenings as you are thinking about content creation, because we don't always want to be tied to our phones, tied to our computers, creating content when we have things like vacations or big life events, birthdays, celebrations, holidays. The last thing we want to be thinking about is Instagram or YouTube or TikTok. So make sure all of that is mapped out in your calendar of choosing. I personally like Google Calendar. So then I move into kind of figuring out when I want to have big things happen in my business. Things like sales campaigns. Do I want to launch any new offers? Do I have any big projects where I need to block out large chunks of time? I want to make sure all of that is on the calendar too. For example, I like to have at least one sales campaign a quarter in that week that I'm dedicated to promoting one product. I don't have a big YouTube video. I don't have a podcast that comes out because I want to dedicate all of my time, energy, and focus onto selling in that week. So I need to make sure that stuff is on the calendar so I can plan accordingly. So after you have all of that stuff in your calendar, we can start to think in terms of weaving your content in and out of that. So for instance, if I have a big sales campaign coming up and I know the 3 weeks prior, I want to be talking about X, Y, and Z topic, I can start to think about that as I plan my content. Or I know coming back from vacation, I don't want to have such a hard-hitting video or something that's going to require a lot of my time because I'm like, I'm going to be drained. I'm not going to want to respond to comments or DMs as often. I might repurpose content so that I'm not having to give as much high energy if I'm just kind of coming back from vacation. So start to think about those things and weave it in and out of your calendar as you see fit. So now we're going to dive into my specific examples. So you can take what you need and leave what you don't, but I want to talk to you about how I plan out monthly content, the perspective that I take here. I like to put out podcasts and YouTube videos every single Monday. So when I start to plan a whole month in advance, I like to sit down and review how many Mondays there are in the month and decide, okay, do I need 4 or 5 episodes or 4 or 5 videos, and just kind of see where everything lines up. Again, always referring back to that calendar to say, okay, we have a sales campaign coming up, I have a vacation coming up, and I plan accordingly. Then I like to jump into Asana, which is my preferred task and project management software. I add in any important tasks that need to be completed that month. I plug in when I'm going to be recording, set up those projects, get those due dates together. And then I start to include any one-off content creation projects that I want to get accomplished in that month that go alongside my typical repeat content tasks that I have month in and month out. And some of these one-off projects might include something like, oh my God, I haven't revamped my Instagram highlights in a while. I want to do that this month. Or maybe I need to update some of my YouTube thumbnail graphics. That needs to happen this month. And those kind of change month in and month out. But as I am planning for the next month, those are things that I take into consideration. And again, I make sure that I am scheduling my monthly batching day into both Asana and my Google Calendar, setting my out of office and making sure that that is done each and every month, because that's the foundation for everything else I do. It's super, super important. So now here's how I plan and think about content on a weekly basis. So each week, my content manager and we produce anywhere between 20 and 30 pieces of content to go across a ton of different platforms. I actually break down this entire process in this YouTube video here in case you want to kind of see what that looks like. The key thing to know here, especially about my content strategy and how I plan things, is that for an entire week, we are focusing on one topic. And that one topic comes from my hero piece of content. Because for me, I really want to hit home to my audience, whatever it is I'm trying to convey in that video, in that podcast, in that newsletter. I want that to be the same messaging throughout social media and where I'm showing up. And why this helps and the way that I approach this strategy is now I only really have to think of 52 different content topics at most. Again, that's 52 weeks in a year. But with that 52, obviously that's the max. We need to account for vacations and time off and things like that. So on average, I'm really only having to think about maybe 45 to 50 different content topics. And those are what I focus on each and every week. And the thing with this is that we are always working a minimum of 1 to 2 weeks ahead. So while I batch all of my YouTube videos and podcast episodes once a month, we're only producing them once a week. This helps us with consistency without getting burnt out, but also being able to stay relevant in the time that content is being published. So my YouTube videos, podcast episodes are typically more evergreen and they will last for 6 months to a year and still be relevant. Since we're repurposing that content onto other platforms, we want to make sure we're keeping up with trends and making sure that we're acknowledging current events and things like that. So that's why we produce that on and plan for that on a weekly basis. So even though my content manager is helping me produce a lot of this content, we're pre-planning, we're pre-scheduling a lot of this stuff. I do also like to show up in the moment. So what this looks like on a weekly basis is Monday, I review the hero pieces of content going out that week. I review my YouTube videos, my podcasts, my newsletter, and see what that topic is all about. And then I sit down that Monday to create any supplemental content that I want to go out that week that might be a little bit more in the moment. So adhering to trends on TikTok. So I'm like, okay, these things are trending. This is how it correlates to my topic for the week. Let me create 3 or 4 videos. Or maybe I want to pre-record some Instagram stories because I know I have a lot of calls that week or I'm really busy that week. So I want to make sure I have like at least 2 talking to camera Instagram stories or something like that. So while we plan and schedule things to happen in advance, that is also a weekly practice. And I put it in my calendar and in my tasks to make sure I'm still staying relevant on social media platforms when things are a little bit more timely. So now, you definitely don't have to approach content planning as crazily as I do, but I wanted to break that down just to give you some insight into how these things work. Choose what resonated with you in this video, and then you can leave the rest behind. But I do recommend you start implementing something in your content planning routines. So if you're looking for help in the organization aspect of this, I want you guys to head to the link below and grab my free Airtable content planner template. It's going to help you get all of this stuff organized. Other than that, I will see you guys next week, and don't forget to hit subscribe.